On this episode of Zoo Tours, we're going back to the bright, beautiful, and humid Zoo Miami. So far, we've gone through Australia to learn about dingoes and wombats, literally crawled through crocodile waters and jumped on a fan boat through the wilds of Florida. And today, I will be your guide through what might be the best the zoo has to offer, Amazon and beyond. In my Zoo Miami breakdown, I very subtly compared it to the Houston Zoo's newer award-winning Pantanal exhibit, which I called the best South American themed attraction in the nation. But I may have spoken too soon. Amazon and beyond may not be as realistic, but the diversity in both the environments and animals presented is unmatched. It's home to over 110 species, which is why this tour will be split into 3 separate episodes. If you're walking from the Amazon to the zoo's main entrance, you first have to pass through a line of wild pigs, also known as the Warthog Crossing. Zoo Miami is mostly defined by very large, lush, moated enclosures, and these 4 habitats continue that trend. There's warthogs, red river hogs, warty pigs, and babirussas. Even though it's not this big, giant, organized attraction on its own, I think it's really cool to have an area dedicated to just pigs, because I literally cannot name another zoo in the country that does this. Before the arch that hides King Kong, there's the Village Square, a large hardscape plaza. It houses a gift shop, food court, splash pad, and for the low price of $7,000, it can be yours for just one night. One thing about Florida's zoos is there's not a whole lot of indoor attractions compared to most states. That includes herpetariums, so it's normal to find reptiles and amphibians viewable from the great humid outdoors. The plaza kicks off the Amazon with the green basilisk, Orinoco Crocodile hatchlings that I'll actually get to in part 2, and next to Texas horned lizards that can build enough pressure behind its eye to squirt a stream of blood mixed with biochemicals in the face of its predator. And the zoo is working hard to boost their numbers in the wild. Now it's time to actually dive into this 9-acre slice of the Amazon. One little criticism it had is that it wasn't lush enough, but that's exactly why visiting a newer exhibit and waiting for the plants to grow a bit can make all the difference in the world. And now it's so dense, it's easy to get lost, especially if it's as misty as a cloud forest. What's a cloud forest? It's a forest perched up so high that it literally touches the clouds. When the summit goes over the mist, it looks like it's surrounded by water, which is why they're sometimes called islands in the sky. The one in Miami starts with golden lion tamarins, a small, swift monkey capable of landing vertically on tree trunks. Unlike a lot of primates that have digits and fingernails like us, tamarins evolved claws on all of their digits except both toes. When they have the pleasure of living with one of the loudest animals in the world. A black howler monkey's large hyoid bone that's in their throats serves as an amplifier, kind of like a Siamang gibbon, but with way more boom. It's about as loud as a jet engine taking off, and as if Darth Vader joined a screamo band. And I thought we were about to hear it, but...
What's he doing?
Oh, he's yawning.
No. Howlers and zoos don't do a lot of howling, but there is a soundboard guessing game. Hear the voices of the Jaguar, keel-billed toucan, a harpy eagle, macaw, and the black howler. You don't have to experience it, there is a bypass path, but if there's a walk-through aviary, no matter how big or small, I'm always there, even if it doesn't have hummingbirds anymore. At least it has cool-looking turtles. Alright, so almost everyone, almost everywhere has thought the only way I'm getting through this day is if I get that 5th cup of joe, but be careful, you could be killing birds. A lot of coffee and chocolate is grown in South America, some grown in full sunlight where forests are cut down in order for it to grow, and this method is unsustainable, but coffee and chocolate raised in existing forests is sustainable. It may take longer for the product to grow, but it's less harmful to wildlife, including birds. Sun-grown equals bad, shade-grown equals good. Next time you think about harming wildlife just so you can wake up a little bit, look for these symbols before buying your brew. So about Florida zoos not having a lot of indoor attractions, especially herpetariums, well, Amazon and beyond has one of those. It packs a lot of bite, and you might even say that it's legendary. The building first grabs your attention with the legend of Quetzalcoatl, whose name basically means feathered serpent. A deity in Mesoamerican culture associated with wind, wisdom, arts, and creating the world. One legend tells us the world was created and destroyed 4 different times, and Quetzalcoatl took a trip to the underworld, picked up some human bones, blended them all with his own blood to create new life, and thus became the father of a new humanity. It took me a second to figure it out, but the centerpiece is an encased, fully detailed 3D model of all 3 sections in Amazon and beyond. If only every zoo did this for their major exhibits. As for the scales and the slime, there are 16 total terrariums, each more detailed than the next. And don't worry, we're not going to take the time to get to know all of them. Uracoan Rattlesnakes, Brazilian Lancehead, Mexican Cantil, and several color morphs of the Eyelash Viper. The Snake Station tells us just a couple of ways that venom is used to help people and treat heart failure and high blood pressure. The teeth make you grateful that the ones attached to living snakes are behind glass. And we actually just saw something similar to this in another episode. A live feed of you, giving you an idea of how pit vipers sense heat on cool nights to find prey. The other side of the building offers a lot more variety, putting you in between towering habitats that face one another. Collared tree lizards on one side and a drop-dead, gorgeous tiger rat snake in the other. Moving along, we have the Alligator Lizard, and whoever was in charge of naming them, good job. That's definitely an alligator lizard. Same with the person that came up with the common name for frogs. Panamanian golden frogs, which are actually toads, have been disappearing from their mountain forests at a rapid rate since the late 90s, thanks to a little bit of a fungus problem. They're definitely one of those animals that needs to be in zoos to survive. Fortunately for everyone, they're becoming a lot more popular, and it seems that they're fairly easy to breed. The microfauna representing the west side of the building might give you the heebies and the jeebies, but to me the reptile room's standout creature is the Anaconda. I know that baby snakes exist and all, but it looks a little short for being the world's heaviest snake. The color is a little off too. That's because this is a yellow anaconda, a little smaller than their green cousins, which we'll actually see later. But 9 to even 15 feet long is still something to brag about, especially when they can take down prey that's even bigger than them. Speaking of taking down things that are bigger than you, around the corner is just one of a few things in South America that literally can tackle any problem. The Jaguar weighs between 120 to 210 pounds, get up to 6 feet long, and will dive at just about anything they can get their paws on and anything that it can fit its jaws around. A lot of zoos that display the world's 3rd largest cat only usually give them 1 public space, but Miami was gracious enough to give them 2, with an underwater viewing in the second one. Not like they care what I think, but this setup avoids one of my biggest pet peeves. The 2 enclosures are connected by an overhead tunnel, and at the time, both animals had the option to explore both spaces. There's just something about one-way overhead chutes that drives me nuts, and yes, I am crazy for caring, especially since jaguars are solitary outside of mating, which according to my calculations, they would have had a cub by now. So they can walk right above you while you walk in between them. The side views are obstructed a little, positively obstructed I should say, by 4 total layers of bamboo stalks. It gives the cats a little extra sense of privacy, and even though I had to try out a few angles, this is where we got our best shots. A seemingly fitting end, but don't go anywhere. You need to hear about how more of your actions could kill more birds. The first aviary talks about avoiding certain kinds of chocolate and coffee. This one warns you about the wildlife trade. Millions and millions of birds are trafficked illegally and transported in not so good conditions. And the zoo says about 30 to 90% of them don't make it through transit. Whether that's an overall number or it refers to per year or per month, it's still bad. According to this exhibit sign, dogs are even being trained to sniff out any suspicious packages that may or may not contain animals or animal parts. And if you plan on buying a bird, at least ask the supplier where they got them. Going back to those reptiles and amphibians, just let you know we've barely put a dent into their collection. Blue rock lizards, emerald tree boas, dart frogs, and rainbow boas are in the walls. And we're going to end our tour with a large closed top but open fronted enclosure. And just like Jacksonville does, they mix freshwater stingrays with caiman lizards, an amazing climber and an even better swimmer. From the cloud forest, we are now moving on into the land of giants section with 21 exhibits versus 31 in the last trail. So it may be a little smaller. It's not like I'm playing favorites though, but the animals here are way more interesting. I know it's not the right place geographically, but life only gives you so many chances to do your best Steve Irwin impression, and this is one of them. When I said we've barely made a dent into Amazon's reptile and amphibian collection, I wasn't really exaggerating. The second trail begins exactly like the first one does, with the wriggly and the weird. Not everything in this land of giants is giant, but I guess Sicilians are bigger than some people would like them to be. This is their 5th feature on the channel, and I still want to see more. It's not an eel, it's not a worm, it's an amphibian related to salamanders and frogs. And as if they weren't cool enough, if you can get close enough to their mouths, you will see that they have 3 rows of teeth. Bearded lizards, black-tailed pit vipers, and they have this little river monster that goes by the name of the green anaconda. Those that have been following along this series, you saw the yellow anaconda that maxes at around 15 feet and 110 or so lbs. Impressive. But let's see the green anaconda's numbers. Maximum weight of 550 pounds, 1 foot wide, and 29 feet long. Although their average numbers are just a little lower, this is still the heaviest snake on the planet. Okay, I want to get serious for a second. Orinoco crocodiles, often called South America's largest predator, are also critically endangered, hunted for their meat, skin, and teeth. As little as 250 have a relatively small range in Venezuela and Colombia. Zoo Miami has been breeding them for decades, and some of the hatchlings are displayed in Amazon and Beyond's entrance. Some are sent to other facilities, and others are prepared for release into the wild. And other not-so-real hatchlings can be found in a nest next to the larger crocs, and if you cross them, they have something to say. While Zoo Miami does their thing, I also gotta shout out the Dragonwood Wildlife Conservancy, a non-profit dedicated to preserving and researching endangered species, primarily reptiles and amphibians, including the Orinoco crocodile. After speaking to some of the passionate owners and volunteers and holding some of their living ambassadors, I wanted us to help out in some way. So if you have like $1 million or $2 million to spare, there's a link in the comments where you can make your donation to this organization. Part of Amazon and Beyond's appeal is that it feels like a true tropical forest. Not just because of the animals, not just because of the plants, but South Florida is one of the few parts of America that's actually considered tropical. I appreciate the immersion, but even in November, I'll just say it was so nice to be inside. Building number 1 was mostly a herpetarium, and this one, well, it doesn't have a shrine dedicated to a Mesoamerican deity, but it does have this eagle statue that I worship, if that counts. I'm gonna count it. Oh, and this building has a lot more variety in species. Looking from the inside out, if you can get past all the fogged up glass, look for motmots, the green jay, intruders that I'm pretty sure aren't supposed to be in here, maybe, and white-faced socky monkeys, male and female. If you don't know much about them and you want to know which is which, the males are the ones that live up to the name. That is the C-shaped dry forest. Now turn around to face the C-shaped flooded forest. Supposedly the zoo's first major aquarium exhibit. 50,000 gallons of fresh water with South America's most famous so-called river monsters. Giant ocellated river rays, 3-foot-long pacus, dazzling red-tailed catfish, and the sleeky streamlined arapaima. I don't know if the water level in this tank changes based on the season like the one in Chicago does, but there is an interactive photo reel of the actual Amazon River, and if you turn a dial, the water will either rise or recede. If you head back outside, there to meet you is something I've seen a bunch of times and also haven't seen a bunch of times at the same time. Supposedly this is where you could feed freshwater rays and fish, but that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. The path leaves us no choice but to walk the boardwalk, revealing that the land of giants circles a pond, or a lake as the zoo sign refers to it. Usually when you see a pond, you also see a bunch of birds. 11 species, big and small, live at the zoo in this pond, but you might see a few welcome visitors on the guest list, which I quickly found out is not limited to just birds. If you're good at identifying animals from the thumbnail, you know that I've been desperate to show you guys the bold, the beautiful harpy eagle. I really wonder if they know how cool they actually are. In Greek mythology, a harpy is a wind spirit that carries the dead to Hades, lord of the underworld. They have the body of an eagle and the head of a woman. Yeah, that checks out. The title for the world's largest eagle is still up for grabs because there are a few eagles that are around the same size, and it really depends on the individual. If you look up lists, harpies are always in the top 5. Not everyone considers them top eagle in size, but a lot will say they are the most powerful. Like, imagine being a monkey and seeing those bad boys coming right at you. Even the communications director, Ron McGill, has something to say about them.
Seems like the feet were something that this bird had to grow into. It seems like it was born with just huge feet.
In the Cloud Forest exhibit, the jaguars can walk above the guest path. That's always cool to see, but we can't say that we haven't come across it before. The harpy eagles have something similar. Our path goes through the middle of the aviary, so you can feel the power from their wings if they choose to fly over your safe from harpy noggin. The zoo has built several platforms for them to nest on, but they went with a more private spot on these rocks. And yes, the zoo has successfully bred this vulnerable apex predator, which historically is not an easy thing to do. The zoo knew that having visitors move on from the harpy eagles would not be an easy thing to do. So to help, they placed the last exhibit right behind the harpies. So you are both looking at the speedster red-footed tortoise, critically endangered blue-billed curassows, and the hawk-headed parrot. Sadly, not in their final form, which looks like this, by the way. So far, our journey has taken us through the Cloud Forest, the land of the giants, and our last destination is the Atlantic Forest. In reality, it makes up South America's northeastern coast, although over 85% of it has been destroyed, bringing several plants and animals close to extinction. Some sources will tell you that giant otters have already been driven out of this area. Some people feel grateful enough to see one kind of otter on their zoo trip. Not me. If you go to Zoo Miami, you have the chance to see 3 American river otters in Mission Everglades, the world's smallest otter in Asian river life. Although it was flooded last time I was there, I don't know if this is open. And then, of course, giant otters in the Amazon. If you see one, of course, it's only natural to just want to cuddle them. But with this species, that's not really ideal, even in your dreams. For context, giants are nearly 6 times bigger than the small-clawed otter, and when fully grown, they're probably longer than most of you watching. Giant otters are also nicknamed the wolf of the river. They hunt in packs from 2 to 20 members. They can handle caimans and anacondas if they're small enough. Out of the 5 giant otter displays I've personally seen, this one just makes the cut as my favorite. Underwater viewing, a large pool, a natural-looking waterfall that doubles as a slide that falls into a winding river. No doubt you were looking at the best of the best habitat in this Amazon and beyond. Like the other 2 realms, there's larger animals, but even more smaller animals. But first, speaking of giants, Atlantic Forest has the very long giant anteater. Now hold on before you get excited. They had some ant matters to attend to, I guess, and we're off display. I don't like to make episodes if a major animal is missing. We'll see one again, and maybe, I don't know, next April. You know, the zoo did a great job with the design when you could still be occupied even if the animals are not around. At least their signage functions unlike this river display hands-on thing. As for the microfauna, the Atlantic Forest has 14 rainforest gems. I also didn't get a lot of cooperation, and that's another reason why this part of the tour is so short, but it was still really cool to see that Miami has a few species that I've never even heard of before. In between all that slime, scales, and wet scales, it had tamarins, marmosets, parrots, porcupines all at once. It still has agoutis and a Lynn's two-toed sloth, but fortunately my friend Johnny dug into his archives and found footage of a southern tamandua, a genus of anteater that decided to show up. Like their giant cousins, they need glasses, but to make up for it, they also have a keen sense of smell. They also have a long snout, long tongue, but because they are smaller and don't have that bushy tail in the way, tamanduas are better suited for life in the trees rather than the ground. And to conclude our short-lived time in the Atlantic Forest section and the entire Amazon and beyond, beautiful bats. I was very close to saying big and beautiful, but I caught myself because these are not your average megabat with a 6-foot wingspan. These are about the size of the ones that might find your way into your attic. According to the sign, this is a colony of 3 species: Jamaican fruit, pale spear nose, and the more common Seba's shorttail. This exhibit isn't the biggest one out there, but at least the bats don't want to be close to certain bats. They can just refuge to their neighbor's house across the street. All 3 sections in this Amazon has an overhead feature: jaguars in the cloud forest, harpy eagles in the land of the giants, and bats in the Atlantic forest. The other 2 features are really cool, but with this many bats, you are guaranteed to have at least one swoop right over the path. And as an added bonus, the viewing windows are meshed, so you can hear this.